Hey everybody, welcome to Café Grit. Today we're going to talk about boundaries, something that's been popping up in my life lately and probably yours too. So let's get to it. Hey everybody, welcome to Café Grit, the place to go when you've got a hankering for purpose, a taste for fulfillment, and you're tired of living the rat race. I'm your host, Beth and Campbell. Thanks for stopping by. Café Grit is now open for service. Hey everybody, welcome to Café Grit, where the moxie is fresh, the passion cold brewed, and everything is served with a heaping side of mojo. I'm your host, Beth Ann Campbell, and it is so good to be back. I've been out of the podcasting world, at least the solo podcasting world, for a few months now. This is my first solo podcast in about 3 months. A lot of reasons for that. Shiny coins, a lot going on, pursuits, changed jobs. That's probably the biggest one. And that will play into my theme today, which is boundaries, which I'm excited to talk about. But yeah, so I've been a little bit out of it. You know, part of my problem is that I actually prefer doing podcasts where I'm talking to people. I like in the grit spot pieces that I do where I've had some guests, and I hope that you'll check them out on your favorite streaming platform or on YouTube. And I'm either the Bean or the Bean 67. I can't remember, but it's TheBeann. If you just look up Café Grit or Beth Ann Campbell, you'll find it. But I prefer talking to people. I prefer conversing with people. And the problem in podcasting for me is that there's several problems. Number one is it takes a lot of work. You have to talk with people and kind of do a little bit of prep work. It's also hard to pick people. I have a long list of people that I'd love to have on my show, but it's coordinating with them. A lot of them are in Europe, so my time is very, very limited. I've been on a bit of a health journey, so my mornings have been spent doing, walking and taking care of myself, and I'm not going to give that up. Boundaries. We're going to talk about that. And I talk a lot about the corporate world, and those people that are in the corporate world who are challenged by some things are reluctant to talk about it publicly, and I get that. So there's a lot of reasons why, motivation, whatever. So, but here I am. I'm getting back to being motivated. I'm getting settled in my new jobs. I took a job over the last 3 months. And here I am. And now today I want to talk about boundaries. So we set boundaries for ourselves. These are the things that we decide that we're going to commit to or do or not do. Seek, not seek, whatever. They're kind of the rules that we set for ourselves. And I think it's very hard for a lot of women, myself included, to set boundaries and stick to them. And there are many reasons for this, not the least of which is upbringing. Most of the people that I know, the women that I know, were still brought up in a day and age where if it was not overt, and sometimes it is, but there was still an unwritten expectation that women are still supposed to be polite, right? We're supposed to be accommodating, because we're the nurturers of the world. And so when it comes to setting boundaries, especially when those boundaries come to have to do, excuse me, I'm going to choke on my own spit right now. I had to do a little editing there because I swallowed my own spit. Inhaled my own spit. It's always fun when that happens right in the middle of a podcast, but you know what? Whatever. So anyway, so I think as women, we have difficulty keeping our boundaries and setting our boundaries. We're getting better at it. The world is accepting that more and more, but I think it's still difficult. But why is that important? It's important because when we don't stick to those things that we think are important and honor those boundaries, we end up making sacrifices that we don't necessarily want or need to make. We tend to give up taking care of ourselves and making ourselves a priority for making others a priority. and it's not a bad thing to take care of other people. Of course not. We're really good at that, most of us, and there's nothing wrong with that. The problem is that we mistakenly think that if we take care of ourselves and stick to our own boundaries, that we will somehow be less able to take care of others or to deal with other things or to manage our world, navigate our world. And the absolute opposite is true. The more that we stick to our boundaries and our commitments and take care of ourselves and prioritize ourselves, the better able we are to navigate the world and take care of those around us and be beneficial to those around us, whether that be our family, our work, the world in general, whatever it is. We're just going to do better if we set and stick to those boundaries. So for me, as I get older and I think more confident, or maybe I just don't give a fuck about any as much as I did when I was younger, I find it easier and easier to set and keep those boundaries. And this has popped up in my life quite a bit in the last few months. The first boundary lesson that I have come across this year has been as a part of this health journey that I've been on. So I have been, for the last 6 months, committed to improving my health, mind, body, and spirit. And I'm working with this amazing coach, Jillian Davies. Look her up. But she has been super helpful. Her program, her support, the structure, and also helping me to learn new habits. And some of those habits include setting and sticking to boundaries. So, for example, I have had over the past 4 months, 4 family visits to my home. My brother and his family came to visit, then my other brother and his family came to visit about a month and a half later. My good friend Corey Joe came to visit, and then my brother-in-law also visited just a few weeks ago. In my past world, in my lack of boundary world, in the world where I did not set, or if I set, I didn't keep boundaries, I would have completely derailed my health journey when visiting family. I would have succumbed to the food is social life sort of reality, which is true. My family is very, very food oriented. We socialize with food. I would have just said fuck it to my exercise regime. I would have said fuck it to my sleep cycle and my commitment to getting a good night's sleep and keeping a pretty steady schedule. It's okay to live a little, but and even a lot. But the important thing is to still keep the boundaries that are important to us. And that's what I had to do. I was tested 4 times when my family, especially when my 2 brothers came out with their families, because we love to just hang out and everybody's eating. And, I was on a particular schedule and I was watching what I was eating. So I had to make some choices. I had boundaries and I had to make some choices as to whether I was going to keep them or not. Some of them I willingly chose to test a little bit or push a little bit. That being, for example, I'm normally in bed and sleeping by 9:30, 10 o'clock. And I stayed up a little late. But there were other boundaries that I had set for myself that I chose to not sacrifice. And sometimes I had to make difficult decisions about activities or staying up. Am I going to do game night until 11 o'clock at night or midnight? Or am I going to get to bed at a decent hour, maybe let myself stay up a little bit later, but still be able to get up and do my daily walk? And I chose the latter. I chose to set a boundary and keep that boundary. Am I going to sit down and eat dinner, even though I've already eaten my daily fill? I'm not hungry to eat dinner. I normally don't eat at 8 o'clock at night, that close to my bedtime, because I know it's going to affect my sleep. But do I do that anyway because the family is doing it, or do I say no? You guys sit and eat. I'll either sit with you and we'll talk, or I will excuse myself if it's too difficult to do that. And I chose the latter. I chose to prioritize myself. And every time I set those boundaries and kept to them, it became easier and easier. So by the time we got to the point where my brother-in-law was visiting, it was a no-brainer. I was able to make small adjustments so that I could enjoy life, but I kept my boundaries. And it feels really, really good to do that because someday I'm going to be out there and I'm not going to have a health coach and I'm not going to be, have that kind of very close monitoring and support. I think probably I'll always have support from Jillian, but you know what I'm talking about. Like I will be a little bit less structured and I'll have to make those decisions. And so the more that I do, the more that I practice keeping those boundaries, the better it gets, the easier it gets. So I also was challenged with boundaries in my new job. So I went back to a job that I had early in my career. Amazing people, wonderful place to work, great boss. There's nothing I can say bad about it other than I walked into sheer madness. And it's not the company. This is very ubiquitous. I know so many people who would tell me the same thing, that they are engulfed in a ton of work, too much to do, multiple tasks, a bazillion things I'm almost not even exaggerating to keep track of. And that's exactly what I walked into. I was very thoughtful about this job. I knew that it was going to be chaotic. It was chaotic when I left, and all the people I talked to said it's still the same. But for reasons that I don't care to get into, this was a choice that I made, and I felt it was a good choice for me and the right choice. So I knowingly entered into this world, but I had no fucking clue how chaotic it was going to be. Compounded, undoubtedly, by the fact that this was new. Even though I was familiar with the people and somewhat with the role, it was similar to something the role that I'd had in the past. So much had changed. It was like a new job. And I was immediately hit with so many, just hundreds and hundreds of things. The email, I mean, an onboarding person shouldn't be getting dozens and dozens and dozens, bordering on hundreds of emails in their first few days, but that's where I was at. So while I put a lot of thought into this and I knew that I was getting back into, this was not going to be a boring job, and that was okay. I didn't want boring. Boring is a slow death for me. I hate it. I wasn't prepared for how busy and mad and chaotic it really was. So I got to day 2 and the stress of, just everything new and trying to keep it all in my head and getting more and more frustrated and concerned about how I was going to get all of this, how I was going to manage all of this in a short period of time and get up to speed, and also feeling a little pressure because I was not brand new off the streets. I felt, there's an expectation here too, because I've worked here before. I should, remember stuff or be able to just jump right in. That was never stated to me. That was all in my head. That was Liz, fucking Liz, my alter ego, my inner voice, my inner critic. But I got to the end of day 2 and I was overwhelmed. I was like super stressed out and I thought, I can't do this. I absolutely cannot do this. This is, what the fuck did I do? And I had to go back and evaluate my reasons, and they were still valid, and it was still a good opportunity. But I had to recognize that what I was doing wrong here was I was not setting my boundaries. And it was as simple as telling myself that I was not going to let myself get consumed by the madness. I was not going to allow myself to be engulfed by the chaos. Because when I look at it logically, that serves no one. It doesn't serve me. It doesn't serve the company. It doesn't serve my boss. It doesn't serve my team, my department. It is a lose-lose situation when we let ourselves be consumed by overwork and too much multitasking and too much pressure upon ourselves. By the way, a whole podcast I could do on this, and that is that we sometimes create these situations for ourselves. Those of us who are kind of in your face people and like to be very responsive and feed off of being able to help people and do things well and have a great reputation of somebody who is very helpful. Sometimes we take that to extremes and we create more chaos for ourselves. But here I am sitting on day 2. I'm borderline in tears because I'm almost ready to call my old boss back and beg for my job back. And I had to stop myself and just take a deep breath, embrace the Zen, and just say, Beth, you are going to set boundaries, and those boundaries are going to stay in place. And those boundaries are, among many other things, but basically, I'm not going to allow myself to get consumed by the chaos. I'm not going to allow myself to get frustrated because I'm not responding within 30 seconds to someone. I'm not going to allow myself to get frustrated because I can't get to something right away because I've got too many other things. I'm not going to allow myself to get stressed out because I'm not learning things in the first day, or that I've got a lot of things still to learn. I'm not going to beat myself up because I have many things coming at me that I need to divert attention to. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it, and I'm not going to kill myself working 80 hours a week trying to fit it all in. I've seen too many people do that. I've been there. I've done it myself. And I, to this day, wear a bite splint for teeth grinding because of that. I set a boundary. And as soon as I set that boundary and I committed to myself that I was going to stick to it, that come hell or high water, I was not going to get pulled into the madness, everything just immediately was like, Because here's the thing. Let's walk through a scenario where Beth Campbell does not set boundaries at work. Beth Campbell allows herself to be overwhelmed. Too much coming at her. She gets frustrated. She gets stressed out. Her health starts to suffer. She starts not having the time, or the maybe she's just too tired to work on her health journey, mind, body, and spirit. Over time, and it won't take long, she gets burned out. And at this day and age, the way I feel right now, being, I think, a little bit more confident, a lot more confident than I was 20 years ago, I won't let myself get burned out. The burnout would happen, but I would leave. If for some reason I were pressured by anybody, and by the way, this has not at all happened. I work with amazing people, but I'm going through a worst case scenario in my head. And my worst case scenario is, what if I start getting pressure to work more, work weekends, and to catch up with all of the noise and the minutia, most of which, by the way, is not emergency stuff. It's always critical to somebody, but it's not true emergency stuff. That's part of the problem. I become burned out, then I get more stressed out because I'm feeling the pressure. And again, ultimately, this is going to lead to me going away. So what happens when somebody goes away? What happens when somebody doesn't stick to their boundaries and they become consumed and they become overwhelmed and they get burned out? I'll tell you exactly what happens, because it's happened dozens of times in my 20 years in IT and the last 12 or 13 as a manager. and that is people leave. They leave the team, they leave the department, they leave the company sometimes. And I know people say that people leave bosses and managers, but I know a lot of people that don't leave bosses and managers and people. I didn't leave bosses and managers and people. I've never left bosses and managers and people. Well, I did once at Meijer at a grocery store, but that's a whole other story. That was when I was in college. Whole other story. But anyway, people leave. And I can tell you, when people leave, it just adds to the chaos. It doesn't help anybody. People leave and you have to backfill them. And it just causes more and more chaos. Again, a whole other podcast on living in chaos. But when people set boundaries and they commit to them, they prioritize themselves and they say, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to let myself get overwhelmed. I'm #prioritize me. They're better employees. They are more productive, believe it or not, because when people are not constantly diverting attention to the latest fire drill that comes along, they're actually more productive. They're happier. They're more fulfilled. They don't leave. They don't get burned out. They stay for a very long time, and that benefits everybody. And me as a manager, that benefits my team. It also sets an example for my team. It benefits my boss because my boss doesn't have to deal with backfill. And by the way, I'm given 100% plus when I'm here, and when I'm needed, I'll be here. All I'm saying is it's not going to be the normal. Everybody has situations, especially if you love your job and you're working with great people, that you will be there when you need to be there. But when people's boundaries are honored, they'll just go the extra mile and you don't even have to ask them. So I've committed to setting those boundaries and not allowing myself to get pulled into the chaos, and not getting frustrated or stressed out or beating myself up because I'm not reacting it to every little thing within a snap second. And it will be beneficial overall for everyone. And the same is true for you in your life, whether it's your job, your home, whatever, something else you're involved in. If you set your boundaries and you stick to them, you benefit everybody. You benefit yourself most of all, but by benefiting yourself and by sticking to those boundaries, you therefore benefit everyone else much more than you would if you continually allow yourself to not honor those rules that you set for yourself, those boundaries that you put in place. I wish I could. I'm not a thesaurus. I hate saying the same word over and over as a writer. I absolutely hate it. But I didn't consult my thesaurus.com to figure out another word for boundaries. And I hate using words like fences because that's just sounds, I don't know, exclusionary. So you know what I'm talking about. So I ask you, what boundaries do you need to set in your life? Do you need to set boundaries with your kids, your spouse, your in-laws, your boss, your company, something else? Think about what you are allowing yourself to not commit to sacrifice for the negative that you can do differently, and ask yourself, what is the worst case if you set those boundaries and stick to them? And what is the best case? What happens if you honor yourself and you prioritize yourself and you stick to your guns, so to speak? Don't like that phrase either, but you stick to your commitment. You commit to yourself. What happens then? How awesome does life get? I'm not saying that it's just everything's going to magically happen, but I'm telling you, for me, the more I do it, the easier it gets. And it does sometimes feel like magic because it's a relief. It's such a weight. It's amazing that by putting these boundaries in place and committing to them, the weight just goes away. And it does get easier. It does get easier. You are the most important person in your life. You're more important than your kids. You're more important than your spouse. You're more important than your parents, your brothers and sisters, your nieces and nephews, your dog. Well, maybe not your dog. No, your dog. Even your dog. Even if it's a chocolate Labrador, which is the most amazing dog in the world, you're still more important than that. You are the most important person in your life, and you cannot be important in other people's lives until you accept that and embrace it and make it real. That is my lesson for you. So, all right. I hope this was helpful. I hope that anybody listening says to themselves, you know what? Fuck it. You're right. I need to set boundaries and stick to them because I am prioritizing myself. If one person does that, I am forever grateful. All right, folks. Thank you for listening. Please check me out on other social media. I'm on Instagram at thebean67. That's at THEBEANN 67. I'm also on Facebook at thebean67. I am on Twitter at thebean, THEBEANN. I'm not on Twitter a ton because I think it's a little vitriolic, but I'm kind of exploring getting back. LinkedIn, Beth Ann Campbell. Look for me. I'm the one wearing the lovely steampunk top hat, at least as of this taping. Hopefully I won't find a better hat and still be around. I mean, I hope I will be around a few years from now, but at the time of this taping, that's what I'm wearing in my LinkedIn photo, my favorite hat, my steampunk hat. And yeah, if you can throw me a rating out on your favorite streaming platform, check me out on YouTube as well. Well, you can see the video version of this. If you're listening to audio, you can go to your streaming platforms for podcasts if you prefer the audio version. But just let me know what you think. I would love to hear your stories. I would love to hear your feedback on how you have set boundaries for yourself, and what it's done for you, because I think these are great stories, great grit stories. The other thing too is, as I said earlier, I love talking to people. I prefer talking to people. So if you are just a fun, smart person with a lot of passion and a good grit story, let me know. Send me a direct message in LinkedIn or reach out in any of the other platforms. And you go to my website, bethancampbell.com. That's Ann with an E, bethancampbell.com. Send me a contact form. I would love to sit down with more people. I've putting myself out there in the podcast world, open to guests. I have had a lot of solicitations from people that really are not appropriate for this podcast, mostly just trying to sell something. And I don't know why they think my little 20 download a week podcast is going to get them fame and fortune. But I have had a boatload of solicitations mostly in LinkedIn or even email. So if you're somebody who's got something to sell, you're, like a dry business person, or you're trying to promote your Bitcoin, please don't bother reaching out. I'm really not interested. Thank you for listening, but I'm really looking for smart, good conversationalists, fun people who have a passion for something in life. It doesn't have to be corporate, and they're pursuing that passion, and they have a good grit story, and they don't mind some humor and some swearing. So anyway, that's it for today. Thank you for joining, and stay gritty. And you are a rock star. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Take it easy.